All right, so here we are in video 4 of this 5-part series. You're getting close, only one more video after this one. This video today, though, it's gonna be all about the offer. So just to recap, we did for videos 1, 2, and 3, we did just the intro and explained a little bit more about who I am and my team at Adam Sells Denver. And then I also talked through that buyer agency agreement and also whether or not you might need to get pre-approval for a loan. That was in video 2. And then the video that you hopefully just finished watching or you have already watched recently at some point was video 3, which is all about showings and just how to really start identifying homes through our search criteria and the tools that we use to communicate back and forth with feedback on which homes you do or don't like and what other just different features or just aspects of the home that you want to share with me on feedback. So that was video 1, 2, and 3. Again, today, it's going to be all about submitting, well, really, I should say, crafting and submitting the offer. So we've identified that ideal home. We've probably gone out and seen it now together in person, or at least you've had me go out and do some video virtual tours for you if you're out of state. But we're at a point now where we really are confident in this home being a great option, and we're ready to prepare and submit an offer to the listing agent. So this video is going to go over all of that. If you guys have any questions when I go through this, feel free, all my info's down below, feel free to reach out. And really, I just want to try and do this in as concise and quick format as I can, with the assumption that if you, without a doubt, you're probably going to have some questions. We'll go through that in more detail one-on-one where I can really answer your specific questions that you have. Contracts are one of those things that are pretty confusing for a lot of people. They were for me as well when I first got into this business. But one thing that I really pride myself on is I'm actually a certified expert in real estate negotiation. And this is the part of this home buying process where that is incredibly important, not just to understand different types of negotiation tactics, but also just being a really good communicator. And when I say communicator, I'm not only referring to the relationship we establish between yourselves and me as the buyer agent and the buyer, but also really getting in depth with the selling agent and establishing a really good rapport and relationship with them if possible, but also, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but understanding and communicating what it is about the seller that is motivating them to sell. What are their reasons behind their desire to sell their home? What are their motivations? Some of those might be emotional. And the reason I bring this up is this is something that not very many realtors talk about. And I think a lot of people that are realtors that may be less experienced or are just kind of trying to cut corners don't take this part of the exploratory part before submitting the offer seriously. And this is where a lot of that negotiation and just leverage can be established as a buyer's agent. And what I mean by that is, again, understanding the reasoning behind why they're selling. It might be a divorce or maybe something that's not very fun to talk about. That might be an example where they have a higher level of urgency that they really wanted to get this thing sold and get this chapter in their life behind them. Or it might be something different. It might be somebody that is still living in the home and they're having some challenges finding their new home, or maybe their home that they're purchasing is delayed a little bit and they can get a lot of value out of being offered a post-closing occupancy within the offer that we submit to them. These are just a couple examples of things that I can do as a realtor to really make sure that our offer stands out above any others if it's a multiple offer situation, but also come to the selling side of this transaction with a sense of compassion and high level of communication and just professionalism. So just wanted to bring that up because that's something I really pride myself a lot on. And it's also an area that has definitely been very successful for myself and my clients with getting our offers sometimes accepted over other very similar offers. Might even be the same price point, maybe even a couple $1,000s more than ours offer, but the way that it's been crafted and delivered to them still might be the winning offer. So in this video, we're going to talk about 5 specific things: deciding on what that offer price is going to be, crafting the actual offer, submitting the offer. Once that offer has been submitted, understanding what the seller's response is. And then number 5, hopefully it's been accepted. And if so, what are the next steps? So number 1, deciding on the offer price. the end of the day, this is always going to be your decision, but my duty as a realtor is just to be providing you with as much information and data as possible to ensure that you're making a very sound and smart decision. So one way that I provide value to my clients on this specific part is really doing a great job with comparative market analysis. That's a CMA report. I talked about this in the last video as well, but just being very in-depth on what other homes surrounding the home that you were preparing an offer on have recently been sold, what price points, what differences maybe existed with those homes compared to this home, just all kinds of stuff like that. This is another area that a lot of realtors cut corners and really don't do the extra effort to understand what similar homes exist currently, as well as in the past 3 to 6 months that have recently sold, and just using all of that data, not only to be a little bit more confident in the offer that we're presenting, but also having that as a tool and a resource to give the sellers and the seller's agent a level of understanding on why the price point is where it is and why that a number that we're proposing is justified in our opinion. One other side note, when we talk about preparing this offer and really having the price point figured out and being confident in that number, I want to make sure and point out that if we're approaching the high end of the range for the budget that we want to spend on this home, it's very important to also realize that there can be additional costs outside of just the offer price on the home. And a few of these, as an example, would be closing costs, any sort of inspector fees, appraisal fees. There's just some other unexpected costs that can come up. And I just want to make sure you're aware of that. If you want to go through any of that in more detail, we can always prepare what we call a net sheet, which is just summarizing as best we can. It won't be exact, but as best we can, that exact dollar amount to expect, just to ensure that everybody's on the same page and there aren't any hidden unexpected costs coming up when we get to the closing table and are ready to sign on that dotted line. So the second thing I want to talk about is crafting the actual offer. And again, this is where I really pride myself on having a lot of experience being a certified expert at real estate negotiation. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to talk through, with crafting the offer, there's a few strategies, a few things you need to understand, but I'm also going to talk through just the actual contract itself. There's several different dates and deadlines, and these are just different areas that we're going to talk a little bit more in number 5, the last video, when we're talking about from contract to close. So I'll talk through more of those dates and deadlines at that point, but I think it's still valuable in this video just to share some of those so you understand what all exactly needs to be decided upon when we're crafting this offer. But really, there's just 3 components of the offer. There's the price as well as the terms. That's what I mentioned. We're going to go through a little bit more in depth here in a second. There's the earnest money deposit. That's you providing some dollar amount to show their level of seriousness and allowing you to basically have this home under contract and reserved to move forward and start doing these other steps along the process. And then third, it's going to be contingencies. So the first one, price and terms. As I said, the price will be determined based off of as much data as possible that I can provide you with recent sold homes nearby, comps, that CMA report, all that good stuff. And then for terms, we're going to go through a lot of this in more depth on a one-on-one call. But just to give you an overview of some of these dates and deadlines that we'll need to talk through and establish before submitting the offer, I'm going to go through that right now. I'm doing these kind of basically from start to finish. So when you're looking at the actual contract, you're going to have right off the top, first date and deadline being the offer acceptance deadline. So this is a big one that we want to make sure we're giving enough time to the sellers to review our offer and decide whether or not it makes sense, whether to accept it, deny it, or potentially provide us with a counter offer. A counter offer is just going to be some few different adjustments that they want to make on their end and then propose back to us. Let's just say, as an example, we have in the dates and deadlines some dates that don't really work well with what they're looking to have, or maybe it's just the price, they want to adjust it a little bit, stuff like that. So again, that's going to be provided initially by us providing them with an offer, and whether or not they want to accept that. If not, there might be that counter offer coming back to us. But that acceptance deadline, we just want to make sure we're giving them enough time to have time to review and just be cordial and just start off right from the very first moment with being reasonable. What I mean by this is we're not going to submit an offer and have the acceptance deadline be 2 hours after we send it to them. I always like to, as a rule of thumb, give 24 hours, but there's also some strategy when it comes to this that we can talk through in specific scenarios. So the next one is the earnest money deadline. And this is just the deadline for the buyer to deposit that earnest money. And then that's just really showing them that we have some serious intent to purchase the property. And usually this is done within a few days of the offer being accepted. And then after that, we have loan application and also loan objection deadlines. And this is just saying that the date that the buyer, you guys, must apply for your mortgage loan by. And then for the objection deadline, this is basically just saying that if we get our offer accepted, but then the loan that we're trying to get just is not available to us, maybe we don't qualify, or maybe there's some other extenuating circumstances, this is giving you the ability as the buyer to get out of the offer and basically cancel it, while also still getting your earnest money back. Then we also have stuff going on with both inspections and appraisals, the inspection objection deadline, the inspection resolution deadline. These are, again, deadlines for the buyer to just complete a home inspection, make sure everything looks satisfactory and up to your standards. If any objections or any things are discovered during this inspection, that resolution deadline is giving the seller time to review any objections we have and then giving them a date that they have to resolve those by. Typically, this is resolved as a seller concession at closing. Most of the time, these sellers don't want to fix something if it's pretty substantial themselves. As an example, let's just say that the water heater is past its typical life, useful life. Rather than them going out, getting a plumber to come out and replace that, there's a rule of thumb that maybe that costs $1,500 to $2,000. So then they'll just negotiate with us that, you know what, we're not going to fix this, but in the inspection resolution, we agree to give a $2,000 credit at closing to account for the cost of replacing that hot water heater. That's just one little example of what that could entail. Similar to inspection, we also have appraisal. This is something that occasionally is waived if it's a cash offer, but if you are going to be getting financing, the lender is always going to require that an appraisal is done. This is just allowing a third party to come out, look at the home, look at similar comps and similar CMA reports than what we're putting together, but they're going to do their own due diligence to identify similar comps and just make a determination if the price point that the home is under contract for is satisfactory for the lender. There will also be some title review deadlines, title resolution deadlines. This is just to make sure that the title is free and clear and there just aren't any unknowns that are potentially existing with the title from maybe a person that owned the property before you did, or just any sort of scenarios like that. So I typically always use Land Title, which is a great company here in Colorado. They are amazing to work with, so we always have good results with them, and that could be just another date and deadline that will come up, and hopefully we'll get through that one really easily. And then depending on the scenario, again, of where the home is located, if it's in an agricultural or a more rural area, there might be some related stuff with the survey. That survey deadline is referring to that. And then the closing date. So the closing date is just that date that you guys are going to either remotely or in person go down to the title office, and you're going to sign on the dotted line a few different times and basically be purchasing the home there. That's the final closing day. It is important, though, to notice that in this offer, there's going to be the closing date, but then there's also going to be the possession date. And I made a quick comment earlier about understanding the seller's motivation to sell and what's most important to them in the offer. And I've won a couple deals recently from being very strategic on this part of the offer, specifically with people that might need to stay in their home for a bit of time after it sells. So this is what's called a post-closing occupancy agreement, and it can go for up to 60 days. So after all of those dates and deadlines, there's also going to be some other things within the offer. Who pays for different fees and different costs associated with, for example, the HOA documents? Is that something that the seller is going to pay to procure from their HOA association, or is the buyer going to pay for that? There's a lot of these little, who pays? Buyer pays, seller pays, or it's a 50-50 split between the two. We'll go through a lot of that again in person when we're preparing an actual offer and preparing ahead of time for when that time comes. But just want to point out again some of these dates and deadlines. Now, in addition to the actual offer, the actual contract that we're sending over, we're also going to have a cover letter. And it's very important to understand that what we're not allowed to do in Colorado is what we call love letters. So you are allowed to still put together just in bullet points, highlighting a few features of this offer, whatever, again, is setting it apart from other offers, if it's a multiple offer type situation. And also maybe a quick background on, who we are as a buyer and a buyer's agent. It's not specifically, but what I mean by this is, we're a cash offer buyer, or, we're experienced. This isn't our first transaction. We are great at communicating and we look forward to working with you. Not a love letter, but just making it very clear that we're professional and that we expect that this entire process will go smoothly from start to finish. Stuff like that is still important in a strategic way to build up, again, that communication and that rapport with the other side of the transaction, and being an expert at negotiation and just preparing an offer that is as likely as possible to be accepted. Nowadays, almost every offer is going to require a proof of funds if it's a cash offer, or if you are going to have lending, you do want to have that pre-approval letter that's current and up to date, and we're going to attach that with our offer. This is just one more way to show our level of seriousness, especially with potentially having multiple offers coming in. We always want to have ours look a little bit better than the others and set ourselves apart in any way that we can. So once we've submitted the offer and they have that offer acceptance deadline, until that passes, we're basically just in a holding pattern and waiting for them to do one of three things. Hopefully they're going to accept the offer, but there might be a few things in the offer that just don't quite perfectly match what they're looking for, in which case they're going to provide us with a counter offer with those minor with any of those changes being made. And then the third offer is just going to be them saying, no, we're going to pass on this one, and they're just going to turn it down. So those are the three possible outcomes, and hopefully it's that first one where they just accept it as is. With either accepting the offer as is, or if they're providing us with that counter offer, at that point, we're once again just going to really review the entire contract from start to finish. It'll be very easy for me to identify what changes have been proposed if it is a counter offer. But we're going to go through all of that and just make sure that everything is sound and buttoned up and exactly as we both parties are expecting it to be. And then we're under contract, which is super exciting, and it just starts this next phase of all of this different stuff that's going to be going on. One other thing I'll mention, with Adam Sills Denver, my team, we always also use a transaction coordinator. So this is not that common, believe it or not, but what it is I pay out of pocket on my expense for a transaction coordinator, which she is amazing, by the way. She helps with all of the dates and deadlines, and just basically is a third person with her eye on all of this stuff to ensure that no dates or deadlines are being missed, and we're just communicating very efficiently with the other side of the transaction, with the sellers. For example, let's just say there's a deadline coming up in 2 days. She's reaching out today to make sure that they're also aware of the upcoming deadline, to make sure that there's nothing that comes up where we're passing the deadline without properly executing certain things, or just everybody is always on the same page with what can be a quite confusing series of different dates and deadlines and just balls in the air that we're juggling. So once the offer is accepted, I'm going to talk through a lot of this in the next video, but at this point, we're under contract. Congratulations. And now we're going to be proactive with starting to schedule a few of these different things that need to happen. And one of the ones that I always like to do very first, right off the bat, is communicating with my preferred inspector, making sure that he's got time available on his calendar to be inspecting the home when we need it to be done. And this is something that's always good to have done as early on in the process, really for both parties, to respect the sellers by doing this. That way, if we do an inspection and just realize that there's some hidden things in this house that we do not want to move forward with, this gives us the ability to just walk away, take the earnest money back, no harm, no foul, and move on to starting to look for the next home. And this inspection phase is just something that's, again, great to do early on, just so we're not prolonging this entire dates and deadlines out where everybody is committed for a few extra weeks where maybe they don't need to be. It's not that common that, major things come out of nowhere if we have done enough of our due diligence before submitting an offer, but it's inevitably going to happen from time to time. And we just want to always be sure that we're giving ourselves as much time as possible to review everything and just to make sure we're making sound judgments and sound decisions throughout these next parts, these next portions of the contract to close phase. I know I went through a lot of that stuff pretty quickly, so I apologize if it felt a little overwhelming. I just wanted to, more than anything else, just give you guys this overview of some of these things to expect. So when we do meet face-to-face, or we're able to craft our specific things in our offer that we're gonna have as a buyers paying, sellers paying, all those different things, the dates and deadlines, once we're able to actually connect and talk through all that stuff, hopefully you at least have a little bit of an understanding now, so we're able to get through that as efficiently and just make sure you guys understand everything as best as you possibly can. But I know you're gonna have questions, so feel free to reach out. Again, all my info is down below. I'd love to just give you more specific details or just info on anything that maybe felt a little bit overwhelming, or I'm sure that I didn't do the best job at explaining a few of these things. So if that's the case, I'm happy to go a little bit further with you on those. But really excited. Hopefully at this point, we're already identifying homes that we want to put offers on. And one little side note, you can only have one offer at a time. So if we put an offer out on a house, until they have either accepted or rejected that offer, we can't go put separate offers on 2 or 3 other homes. So that's just a thing that just does not, we're not allowed to do that. So it's also important to understand that. So when we do find a home, we got to be all in on that home until it's accepted or rejected. We can have a few other homes in the queue where if this one doesn't work out, we're immediately going to go to this next one. But just to be aware, I want to make sure I made that point before we close out this video. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Looking forward to sharing the final 5th video with you after this one, where we're going to talk through again some of the specific things during that contract to close, some things that inspectors typically look for, a little bit more about appraisals, just all that remaining stuff. So we're really, really clear on what's going to be going on and what to expect up until that date where we are hopefully closing on your next home. I'll see you guys next video. Have a good one. Bye.